The first thing I recall is the sound of forks frozen midair as my sister yanked her boyfriend toward me, her grin already dripping with mockery before a single word left her lips. Christmas lights danced across her face when she delivered it. This is the failure of our family. My parents laughed like it was tradition, like my humiliation was part of the holiday ritual. I stayed still. I didn't respond. But he did. He looked at them, then at me, and his voice sliced through the room. Interesting. Because she's not the one who's done. And in that moment, something shifted, quietly but irrevocably. My name is Serenity Hale. For as long as I can remember, I've existed at the periphery of every room in my own home. Even as a child, I learned to move silently, carry plates without a clatter, linger where the light didn't reach, leave space for the people my family actually noticed. Most nights, dinner felt like a performance where everyone else had the lines. Leia always took center stage beneath the chandelier, her plate overflowing with the first portions. Mine was whatever remained when the serving dishes circled back. Cold vegetables, a chipped corner of bread, the smallest piece of chicken. I didn't complain. Complaining only summoned Diana's voice, soft but cutting. Don't be greedy, Serenity. She said it so often it became a rhythm, a background pulse in the house. Richard hardly glanced my way unless something required fixing. A broken faucet, a late bill, a chore Leia didn't want to handle. I existed for tasks, not for attention. He called it building character, though Leia somehow never needed such lessons. She received new clothes, clubs, opportunities. I got lectures about being practical and grateful. I remember one winter afternoon when Leia forgot her school project, some elaborate poster Diana had helped her with. When the teacher called, Richard didn't ask Leia why it was missing. He turned to me, irritation sharp in his tone. Why didn't you remind your sister? As if my life's purpose was to prop up hers. Leia didn't even look guilty. She never did. In our home, guilt was something assigned, not earned. As we grew older, I faded further into the background. My own small, hard-won accomplishments disappeared beneath the weight of her performances. I remember getting accepted into an art program downtown. I came home clutching the acceptance letter, heart pounding, thinking maybe this time they would finally notice me. Diana read it silently, then set it carefully on the counter. Leia had danced that day, she said, and we can't be driving all over town. When I stayed quiet, she added, your mother would want you to be practical. That acceptance letter ended up in the trash that very night. 2 days later, Leia's dance costumes arrived. Money vanished the same way my opportunities had. Quietly, payments meant for my classes, my savings, my future, rerouted to Leia's needs, new shoes, competition fees, weekend trips. I learned early not to ask where my share went. Asking only made Richard sigh. Like explaining yet again was exhausting. We invest where it matters most, he'd say. I always knew what he meant. The strange part was, no one ever called it favoritism. They called it support. They called it doing what's best. They called it family. And I believed them because believing made the house feel slightly less harsh. Still, I wasn't completely blind. I had my small rebellions. Late nights drawing in the laundry room studio above the washers, tucking scraps of allowance into envelopes hidden behind detergent bottles, crafting a private world where I didn't have to earn a seat at the table. Even then, though, part of me held on to hope. If I worked hard enough, stayed steady enough, quiet enough, maybe someday I'd be welcomed into the warmth they reserved for her. It took years to see that warmth was never meant for me. That was the day I learned my place in this family. It happened quietly, like erasers slipping away. A missing name, a shifted glance, a door closing without a sound. I was in the office late. One of those evenings when the city beyond the windows feels like a distant hum. Leia's voice drifted from the break room. Bright, rehearsed, careless. My sister doesn't have a real career, she said, loud enough to draw laughter. She just floats around. Adrian only keeps her around out of pity. I didn't intervene. I stayed behind the half-open conference door, one hand gripping my laptop bag, breathing through the familiar sting. By the time I passed them, the conversation had already moved on, as if it had never happened. But the next morning, the real hit came. My concept file, weeks of work, was gone from the shared folder. In its place was a new version, renamed Polished, just enough to appear like someone else's idea. Yela's initials were in the signature line. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. The cursor blinked. Patient, indifferent. A soft knock broke the quiet. The intern stepped in, shoulders hunched, like he wanted to vanish. I saw her download your file yesterday, he whispered. She deleted the original. His eyes darted to the hallway. I didn't know what to say. I nodded. Not at him. At the pattern, at the cycle so old it felt embedded in my bloodstream. I opened the access logs. There it was, her username, the timestamp, the deletion, the upload. Clean, deliberate. During the afternoon meeting, Leia told the story again. Serenity dropped out of everything when we were younger. She always crumbles under pressure. Polite chuckles followed. Adrian didn't laugh. His gaze flicked to me for a fraction of a second, like he saw something in the space I occupied. I kept my hand still on the table, fingers pressed to the cold edge. Silence settled over me like a worn coat, heavy and familiar. I didn't correct her. I didn't defend myself. I didn't ask why she felt entitled to reshape me year after year. When the meeting ended, she slipped past me, smiling. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. I just returned it. I didn't go home after that. I left the office, rode the elevator down, and stepped into the cold evening like I was plunging underwater. Cars passed. People chatted. Holiday lights blinked from downtown windows. None of it felt tethered to me. I kept moving until the cold burned enough to make everything feel sharp again. When I finally stopped, I was at the co-working space 2 blocks from our agency. The keypad clicked beneath my fingers. The lock beeped, granting entry. Inside, the room was empty. White light on long tables, the soft hum of a printer, someone having forgotten to turn it off, and the faint scent of stale coffee grounds. It was the kind of silence that doesn't comfort but steadies. I set my laptop on a table and opened the logs. Every timestamp was a small betrayal. Leia downloading my concept, the deletion, her upload, the edits, and then the late-night email to Adrian claiming the original direction was flawed and she had fixed it. I didn't react. I just kept scrolling. Access logs don't lie. They don't gossip. They don't warp the truth. They only show what someone actually touched. I copied everything into a folder I simply labeled documents. Then I began gathering payments, bills, transfers, screenshots of budget she'd signed without permission, emails where she hinted I was overwhelmed, unprepared, emotionally inconsistent. She had crafted her own version of me in the system, one that justified taking my work, my credits, my place. It wasn't new. It was simply the first time I had proof. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from my aunt, a photo of old paperwork she'd found while cleaning. Payments my mother had set aside for me. Savings meant for my future, the ones that vanished when I was a teenager. Your mother wanted you to have these, she wrote. I stared at the screen long enough for the blue light to sting my eyes. Then I added the files to the folder. Around 1 a.m., I moved to the back corner of the space, where floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the dark city. Snow had begun falling. Fine. Whisper light flakes drifting beneath the street lamps. I watched them until my breathing evened out, until my heartbeat settled. Then I opened a new spreadsheet, a straightforward one, cataloging everything I had accomplished at the agency. Clients I'd secured, campaigns I'd overseen, projects Leia had taken credit for, folders I'd organized, budgets I'd balanced, hours I'd meticulously tracked. The list stretched farther than I anticipated. Most people imagine revenge as fiery. Mine was cool, precise, a string of quiet administrative maneuvers. Typed, saved, filed. The next morning, before anyone arrived, I headed to the old studio above the laundromat on Aurora's outskirts, the place where I'd launched my first freelance work. The machines below rumbled, jostling the floorboards just like they always did. The air carried the familiar scent of detergent and warm metal. I slid open the storage drawer. My old drives were still there, bundled in a scarf from years past. I plugged them in and waited. Folders bloomed across the screen. Early sketches, concept drafts, original styles that eventually defined the AY's signature voice. All mine. Every foundation Leia had leveraged to build her reputation. I took what I needed, not out of malice, but because it belonged to me. Back at the office, Adrian sat in the conference room, staring at his laptop as though he were trying to outrun a headache. He glanced up when I entered. "Sick," he said quietly. I did. He angled the screen toward me. "My file, the one Leia claimed." He tapped the corner. "Your metadata is still intact." Of course. She changed the label, not the core. He opened the access logs beside my folder from the night before. "You pulled everything, just like he said." I nodded. "I didn't push you into this, did I?" "No." "And you're sure you want me in on it?" I paused, considering silence. Considering what happens when you speak and nobody hears. Considering what happens when you stay quiet and everyone assumes you'll keep swallowing the pain. "Yes," I said. He studied me for a long moment. Not with pity, but with the careful attention people give when handling something fragile. Then he leaned back. "HR needs this. Legal needs this. And the board needs to know exactly who deserves the credit." His voice wasn't angry. It was precise, administrative, controlled. We spent the next 2 hours putting the file together. Every document, every log, every payment irregularity, every instance where my work had been funneled into Leia's spotlight, typed, printed, signed. Around noon, he slid the final packet across the table. "I'll handle the process," he said. "You don't have to be the one to deliver this." Part of me still wanted to. Not to confront her, not to justify myself, not even to win. I just wanted to stop being the silent witness to my own erasure. I picked up the packet. The stack of paper felt heavier than it should. I rested my hand on it, steady and composed. "This time," I said, "I won't fix what they've broken." I arrived late on purpose. Christmas dinner was underway when I stepped through the doorway of my father's house. The air was thick with cinnamon, roasted meat, and the kind of laughter that sounds scripted. Lights glowed too warmly against the winter cold. Every year, this house tried to convince the world it was a home. I lingered in the hallway, letting melting snow drip from my coat onto the tile. No one noticed me at first. Leia was busy spinning small stories for distant relatives, recounting achievements she hadn't earned, leaning into Adrian's shoulder like she owned the room. He wasn't touching her back the way he usually did. His hand hovered a moment, then fell. When Richard finally spotted me, he gestured to an empty chair at the far end of the table. "Sit. We've been waiting." His tone suggested it was my fault for unsettling the picture. Diana's eyes flicked over me. "Coat, shoes, hair." Searching for flaws. "Try not to make an entrance," she murmured. I didn't respond. I took the seat at the edge, half in shadow as I always had. Dinner resumed, and then inevitably Leia stood, pressing a hand to Adrian's arm as if asking for applause. "I want everyone to meet my sister," she said, voice bright. "This," she paused, a practiced sweet smile on her lips, "is our family's failure." Richard was the first to laugh. Diana nodded, almost proud of the line she'd delivered. The conversation dwindled into that familiar hush of shared cruelty. The same sound from childhood dinners, the one that always told me to shrink, stay silent, and let the moment pass over me. Adrian didn't laugh. He set his fork down with a soft clink. The room seemed to pause around the sound, as if a curtain had fallen over all the noise. The Christmas music from the kitchen speakers faded into nothing. He scanned the room. Leia, her parents, and finally me. "Interesting," he said, his voice low, steady. "Because you're fired." The words landed calmly, without drama, without force, just plain truth placed squarely in the middle of the table. Leia blinked, confusion flashing across her face. "We're done," he added, effective immediately. A few relatives shifted uneasily, unsure whether to act like they hadn't heard. Silence wrapped the room tightly around itself. Adrian reached for his tablet, swiped once, and connected it to the living room TV. The screen brightened, casting cold light across the faces. The first file appeared. The original concept documents, my name embedded in the metadata, access logs timestamped and untouched. Leia's username glowed beside every action she thought went unnoticed. "Download." delete, upload. Slide after slide revealed exactly what she had taken. Not just the file, but months of work, client strategies, design drafts, entire projects. Her voice faltered as the evidence assembled itself. I didn't, she began. He didn't look at her. You did. When the payments showed as transfers, you initiated budget approvals. You signed off without clearance. Richard leaned back, his face tightening, the illusion cracking at last. Diana opened her mouth, then closed it. There was no script for this. Adrian stayed calm, unshaken. The board received the full report this morning. HR has already processed the termination and final note. He clicked once more. My portfolio appeared. The real one. The campaigns I built, the projects I led, the clients I brought in, years of work hidden behind their narrative. Reality, he said, eyes on me now. Speaking not for permission, but for fact, is the co-founder and principal strategist of our agency. She always has been. No applause, no vindication. Just a shift in the air, as if the house itself had been holding its breath for years. And finally exhaled. Leia recoiled from the screen as if it burned her. You're choosing her over me, she said. Adrian looked at her with the same quiet finality he had maintained all night. I'm choosing the truth. No one met my gaze. They couldn't. The story they had built had crumbled before their eyes. I sat quietly, hands resting lightly in my lap, heart steady. For the first time, my silence didn't feel like defeat. It felt like command. Seattle didn't immediately feel like a new beginning. At first, it was just gray mornings, bus routes I didn't know, and the gentle patter of rain against a window that didn't belong to any chapter of my past. Yet distance carries its own grace. It allows the mind to expand, to breathe, to reshape the contours of a life. My apartment was modest, walls uncluttered, with a single plant perched near the window. Outside, the city moved quieter than Aurora in winter. No forced laughter, no polished family image, no roles to inhabit. Just the soft, steady rhythm of rain, like a gentle check-in. Adrian helped me arrange the office, not out of duty, but because he knew the difference between space made to survive and space made to live. We kept it simple. A wooden desk, a soft chair, a few pinned sketches from campaigns that were truly mine. Work here felt different, lighter. Not because it was easier, but because no one was trying to take it from me. I didn't sever ties with my family. I just stopped orbiting them. Whatever consequences followed. Scrutiny from relatives, fractured stories they managed without me. Where there's alone. Silence can sting, but sometimes it is the only language people truly understand. A year later, on Christmas Eve, I cooked dinner with coworkers who had quietly become friends. We packed extra meals and walked them to a nearby shelter. The air was sharp but invigorating, waking me rather than freezing me. Sitting down at my own small table afterward, I placed the choicest, crispiest portion on my plate. No one questioned if I deserved it. No one weighed my worth against another's appetite. The moment was small, almost negligible, but it felt like life folding perfectly into itself, whole, unbroken mine. I once believed survival meant holding my tongue long enough for someone to finally notice me. Now I see it differently. Silence is not a void. It is a door I choose when to open, when to close. A room no one enters unless I allow. I stopped asking for a family that only applauded my failures. And once I stepped back, their noise no longer followed me. Wherever this story reaches you, may you feel the calm certainty of moving toward a life that responds in kind.